Chairman Whitfield, thank you for holding today's hearing on this timely issue. Several major studies over the last year, including CBO, Brookings, and Columbia University, all agree on a key issue. American consumers and households will benefit if we repeal the outdated ban on crude oil exports. Some have countered that if we lift the ban, OPEC will simply respond by cutting production to stabilize the price in their favor. I think clearly that most recent actions by OPEC rebut that assertion, and I don't think it's appropriate to try to reassert it at this point in time. Also, we've seen in recent months, OPEC wants to keep market share by maintaining production, even in a low-price environment, and they hope to undercut U.S. shale producers, thereby reducing the incentive to reinvest in the business. The Brookings Institution, along with respected economic consulting firm NARA, looked at different OPEC scenarios, cuts in production and maintaining current production levels, and here's what they concluded. The benefits of lifting the ban depend on the energy market conditions and how other oil suppliers, especially OPEC, respond. And then they go on and say the key phrase they said is, what is most important is our finding that in all of these modeling scenarios, there are positive gains for U.S. households. And so the shale revolution in the United States has fundamentally altered the global energy picture, and I think we owe it to hardworking American families and the consumers to facilitate the continuing improvements that we're seeing in this market. Columbia University also reached a similar conclusion, stating while in the past market observers have generally assumed OPEC will offset a large share of non-OPEC production to defend prices, current OPEC behavior in response to the U.S. shale boom cast doubts on the cartel's ability or desire to offset non-OPEC supply. And Mr. Sheffield, like you, I went through 5 of these downturns. I had counted 4, but you're right. I recounted after you said 5. It is 5. Mr. Kingston, my first question is for you. What is your view of OPEC's potential reaction if we were to lift the ban on crude exports?
Well, I think you said it in your answer. OPEC is certainly not going to change its policy now, which is to hold on to market share just because the export ban is lifted. Particularly, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think you can necessarily count on how much oil is going to go out the door. I think certainly, as Mr. Sheffield pointed out, the light condensate doesn't have a great market in the U.S., so that would continue to flow, but that doesn't look like that needs a change. The Commerce Department has clarified that. So if you're talking about crude out of the Gulf Coast or whatever, how much would OPEC cut? It doesn't change really the global supply-demand balance.
Thank you. And I'd try to keep your answers short because I have several questions for each of you. Would you agree that opening new markets for U.S. oil producers would be good for both the U.S. and our allies, regardless of what OPEC does? I think you answered that affirmatively. So
yes, I'd agree with that.
Mr. Burnett, given that the U.S. shale revolution and OPEC's recent response to keep market share, on what basis can you assert unequivocally that OPEC will respond by cutting production if U.S. crude oil can be bought and sold in the global marketplace?
Historically, Saudi Arabia and OPEC have cut production to maintain market prices.
But they haven't at this time. Let me move on to the next question. You make more products than just jet fuel, right?
Yes.
You refine the full distillation scheme. So do you export any jet fuel?
We do not export jet fuel.
Okay. Do you export any other refined products?
We occasionally export some diesel and some gasoline.
Okay. Would it be appropriate
it's mostly swapped for jet fuel in other locations?
Would it be appropriate to stop you from exporting those other refined products?
I'm sorry?
Would it be appropriate to stop you from exporting any of those other refined products?
Of course not.
Okay.
It's a free market. Products are in a free market.
If we said that you could no longer sell those refined products and you were forced to sell them only in the U.S., what would happen to pump prices?
What would happen if refineries were not allowed to export gasoline or diesel is that you would start cutting back refineries and closing refineries.
Okay, Mr.
So
Sheffield, that's perfect. That goes right to where I want you to go. Mr. Sheffield, if we keep the ban on crude oil and keep prices depressed, what does that do to reinvestment in the upstream industry?
I think you'll see the drop of 900 rigs go to a drop of another 1,000 rigs. It'll lead to significantly declining production, and this country will be importing 60%, 70%, 80% of our oil from the Middle East.
And so, Ms. Jaffe, if that happens, who gets hurt?
All I can say, sir, is I'm in the same direction as you. In either case, when you ban and try to do something to twist the market around, the consumer is the one that gets hurt.
That's exactly where I'm going. So does anybody disagree with me that if you put, well, I'm out of time. If you put artificial constraints on the market of any kind, whether it's upstream, downstream, midstream, or anywhere else, you hurt the American consumer and hardworking families who have been crushed under this economy for the last 6 years. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.